What's up, creeps, ghouls, and goblins? Welcome to the Let's Talk Horror channel and welcome to the Creepzone. This is our new video podcast series that's going to be bloody good fun. We've got really honest, in-depth conversations that are unfiltered, unrated, unedited about something. Every month I will bring out a new one and I have an amazing guest all the time. And this is an episode that I've been there he is. This is an episode I've been really excited about doing because not only are we going to be talking about a film that's been out for a long time, it's an old film, and we'll get into that a little bit. I'm speaking to somebody that is an old friend of mine. That sounds like we're not friends anymore, but obviously we bloody are.
Giving up. Forget it.
We're giving up with his old friends. We haven't spoken for ages, but no, we have. So on this episode, we're going to be talking about The Crow, which we're definitely going to get into. And on this episode, I have my bloody good friend, Koopanut. I know him as something different, but you'll know him as Koops and Koopanut. How are you, you handsome son of a bitch?
It sounds like you're saying there that Koopanut isn't my birth name, which is really weird because obviously
sorry, yeah, it is.
That is my legal name.
Legally,
I'm very well. Legally Koopanut. That's going to be the name of my next album. Because it's a fact. I'm bloody well. I'm glad to be here. I'm excited to talk about The Crow. As Let's Talk Horror channel is all about horror, it's often that I can't engage because I'm petrified of horror. But because The Crow, like when I came on, you kindly had me on before to talk about The Predator. It's another kind of crossover, kind of has horror elements, but isn't a traditional horror film, so to speak, which I'm sure we'll get into. I'm really excited to be able to be involved in your podcast, because more often than not, I wouldn't know what I was talking about, and I'd just be cacking my pants in the corner. So
that's it. Yeah, it's not like watching The Exorcist or something like that, where you
which I've never watched, and I never will. I've never watched Silence of the Lambs. I'm too afraid. So
no, and you don't even like lambs.
I actually, it is my favourite roast. If anyone wants to cook me a roast, provided there's mint sauce. If there's no mint sauce, I would rather have chicken.
There we go. So there's a reason why we sort of wanted to do this movie. Like you've already said, one, it's not like a full-on horror movie. It has aspects of it, and we don't, want you to pass out watching a horror film. As fun as that might be, we don't want that happening. But the reason that I sort of was thinking about The Crow is because, like where we've been friends for, I think it's either 20 years or coming up 20 years. A long time, because we used to work together at a cinema, which is the best job of all time. We both said that. We know it is. Anybody who worked there will agree it's the best job ever. And hence us obviously working at a cinema. It means that we saw a shitload of movies.
Yeah.
And there are always ones that pop up in discussion. And then there are ones that always sort of almost remind you of that person. There are films that, that have popped up in a discussion that we've had within our friendship circle more often than other films. Some of them might be Universal Soldier 3, The Return.
Of course. Why would you not jump at every opportunity to talk about that film? Because
about that movie.
It is.
Another one might be Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles,
which I rewatched recently, the original, about 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's another one that pops up. The Raid movies, there's some more.
Yeah.
But one of the other films, obviously, that has popped up in a lot of conversations that we've had about movies, whether it's with us two or our friendship circle, is The Crow. I think it's just such an iconic movie, which obviously we're going to get into for people that are in sort of our age range as well. It's unforgivingly a 90s movie. And it sort of represents a lot of youth, I think, of what it was or the time that it came out. It represents a lot, and I think it is a film that a lot of people our age, and even now, but a lot of people our age really connected with.
100%. It's a cultural touchstone, isn't it? Like,
yes,
it's an iconic film, and I think when it came out, because it was so striking visually, it was quite notorious at the time when it came out, and we weren't of a legal age to watch it at the time that it came out. What do you must have the fact? What do you know what year it came out? Because I didn't
So
actually
that
add
yeah,
that to my
The Crow was released in 1994.
right.
So we probably would have seen it. So that's one of the things I always ask before I really get into it. Anyway, do you remember the first time that you watched The Crow?
No, but I remember the first time people I knew watched The Crow. So it must have been about 1999. So it was a cult film. Like
Yeah,
it was I know it was relatively successful at box office to a certain degree, but I think it found its home on VHS and DVD because
yeah,
people discovered it. It was a rewatch, it was a rewatcher. People would watch it a lot because it was so atmospheric and engaging or whatever. But like the promo for it and like the artwork for the movie, it looks like a horror film.
yeah,
And I, in year 9, when my kind of my gothy friends, because at school I kind of sat in the middle of all the different social groups. I didn't really fit I had kind of there was a wider group of like the nothings in between us, I suppose, to a certain degree. But we had there was, but I was friends with like the gothy rock people as much as I was friends with the people who love five-a-side football and shit.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
remember in
I
media
know the saying.
studies,
Yeah,
I'd sat with quite a few of the kind of gothy people, and I remember that they were saying, "Oh, come round to our so and so's on Saturday. We're all watching The Crow," and I was like, "Fuck no, that sounds petrifying." As far as I was aware, it was an out and out slasher horror film. That's what I thought
yeah,
it was. And I was chatting to a friend last night about the fact that I was doing this with you today, and saying it was about the Crow, and he didn't watch it then, and has never watched it, believing it was a horror film as well. I think a lot of people
yeah,
misunderstood it for a horror film, and I think that built into its lore and its kind of history in that it's kind of like a little. To some people, it's kind of a secret that actually it looks like a horror film, so lots of people haven't watched it, but actually they're missing the point, and actually
yeah.
you're out of the club having not experienced it and finding out what it's actually about.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm quite similar as well in regards to obviously horror. I watched. I was already hard and obsessed with horror,
Yeah,
but yeah, this was. You're right. This is one of the ones where it's like I was buying VHS or getting people. Obviously, I couldn't buy it because I was too young. So I was getting an uncle or my mum to buy me these VHS tapes constantly. Just excited what the next movie was that I was going to watch. And this one is one of those films that I really connected to because it was in my teens that I watched it.
yeah,
And when you're in teen and you're impressionable and you're obsessed with movies and things like this, that this is one of those films that, and we go into this as well, that as a movie, like sort of ticked every box.
yeah.
And
It does.
when I watched this for the first time, I was not only blown away, but I was incredibly impressionable, by everything that I was watching. And it's one of those things where, very rarely do you forget where, like, something that has an impact on you like this, like a film like this, or something that happens, you sort of like never forget certain things. And that's why it's exciting talking about The Crow, because this is one of those films where it's never left me from, like, I remember sitting there, just watching it and taking it all in. And but yeah, so it's such an incredible movie to do that. But yeah, like I said, so
Yeah,
the
and
film was
I think
released. Sorry.
sorry, just to round that off, I think you're
Yeah,
exactly right, and I think the legacy of this film is that okay, I don't remember the first time I watched it because I didn't actually watch it until I was probably 2021, probably
yeah,
around the time that I got to know you. You probably one of the people who encouraged me to watch. You and Martin,
yeah.
a
That's what I was
colleague
going
of
to say.
ours, who's
Mine.
also a
Yeah,
bandmate of mine. He had the graphic novel, which I also now have, which I've got in front of me here. Um, so he was the. I think it might have been him actually, but the discussions were between like the three of us and the wider group. But
yeah,
it's so iconic that I remember the time I didn't first watch it. I
yeah,
remember
yeah, yeah,
friends saying that they were going to watch it for the first time. That's how iconic this movie is. It's so well known. It was marketed in such a way that it did it it almost tricked people into thinking it was the kind of thing it wasn't. So then, if you did watch it, you kind of unlocked a little secret that you were in because you realised that there was more to it than it just being a horror film. It has so many different aspects to it.
Yeah,
And therefore,
absolutely.
I think that's what makes it that cult classic. That's what makes it. So many people wouldn't have seen it at the cinema, but they would have seen it at mates on DVD or on at VHS, and then they gone out and bought a copy because they're like, I want to watch that again because it's great. So
Yeah,
yeah, I think
exactly.
that it all builds into such a wonderful legacy, and obviously the stuff that went on behind the scenes in the making of the film, and obviously the graphic novel and the quality of the graphic novel in itself, and how
Yeah.
successful this was preceding it. I mean, it all makes sense as to why it is iconic now,
Yeah.
and so many of us know and love it.
Absolutely. So yeah, so the film, like I said, released in 1994. So like I said at the start, it's a film that came out a long time ago, which means that this year will mark 30 years of this movie, which is
Oh yeah,
mental.
of course.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So 30 years. This so that's a bit of coincidence as well. Happens every now and again, but yeah. So 30 years this movie would have been out. It is a film that when you watch it, it honestly doesn't still feel 30 years. It does feel definitely 100%, that 90s grunge goth aesthetic, but it still doesn't, I don't know. It happens quite often, like the older you get, and then your brain is still stuck in the 90s and the 2000s. So then you think
yeah.
these films aren't 30, 40 years old. But yeah, so that's mental that it is
It's got a
now
kind of
30
Sin
years old.
City vibe. And when you
Yes.
think Sin City wasn't, it's not as old as The Crow, but you could
Yeah.
watch them back to back and think that they were made around the same time,
Around the
because I
same
think
time. Yeah.
the mise en scène is so strong. The world building is so strong
Yeah.
that actually the age of the film, although it is very 90s, particularly in the soundtrack, which I'm sure we'll get onto as well,
Yeah.
if you've
Yeah.
got enough bloody time, because there's so much to talk about with this movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's because it builds such a world, and there's Tim Burton-esque elements to the world building within it. And I think, and those Tim Burton films from the 90s are relatively timeless because of that aesthetic. I think
Yeah.
that just strengthens its ability to, I wouldn't call it timeless, because there are elements of it that make it feel older, but they don't make it feel like you're sat down to just watch some old film. Do you know what
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's not like
Exactly right.
watching an old like action. It's not like watching Lethal Weapon 3, like where like it's so 90s. You can kind of smell it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it has a world unto itself that is kind of a little bit beyond time, but just kind of subtly influenced by it.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Absolutely. It's so this one's directed by Alex Proyas or whatever you want to call him. He's a director that's made some decent movies as well. Another film he did make was a film called Dark City, which is a really really good film. It's another film that not a lot of people have seen, but that is. I mean, it's Dark City, so it's a dark movie. It is, and it still has sort of the tones, the look, and the feel of like The Crow, but a little bit more. It feels a little bit more advanced in regards to technology and all that sort of stuff. But Dark City is another one. Obviously, he also made iRobot as well with
Oh
Big
right,
Wheel.
I didn't. To be honest, I never even thought about who the director was. I just like it's just never occurred to me to think about it. But
Yeah,
yeah, I didn't
but yeah,
realize it's the same as iRobot.
yeah. So he did that. The film has obviously got a huge cast, starring obviously someone that we get into a lot about with Brandon Lee. Ernie Hudson, Rochelle Davis, Michael Wincott, Tony Todd is in this, David Patrick Kelly, and obviously, there's a shitload more people in this movie. It's got a stacked cast, but once again, as I said, these are all things that I'm looking forward to getting into. On IMDb, this is sitting at 7.5%, and on Rotten Tomatoes, 84%. So the consensus is still out there that after 30 years now, this is still a top movie. We had a budget of 23 million, but it made 93 million worldwide. So it was a big success. It made its money back. I'm sure, like a lot of it, and this, I'm going to say this now as well, but obviously a lot of it, like you were saying, is right. It was down to like VHS, DVD, and all those sales and everything like that, and word of mouth about this movie. But obviously, one of the big things about this movie was the unfortunate controversy of everything that happened to Brandon Lee on it. But I'm not going to talk about that on this episode because it's out there. If you want to know anything more about the unfortunate, situation where Brandon Lee died on set, you can just Google it and do it that way
Yeah.
because,
Stick it on YouTube. You'll find loads of
yes,
stuff on it.
yeah, exactly. It basically it fucking sucked. It was an absolute travesty that it happened. But that's what when you're watching this movie. Yes, it's difficult to not think about that. But then once you start watching it and you get so invested in it, you realize that how much of an importance that Brandon Lee had on this movie and would have had in Hollywood after this movie. So it is super sad. But yeah, I'm not going to go into the details about it.
It's
So
an incredible legacy, isn't it, for him?
yes, yeah,
If nothing else, like it's terrible, but what an incredible performance. What it isn't worth the fact that he's no longer with us, but what an incredible way to go out, and what it's so fitting to the dark nature of the film that there should be this kind of controversy, and it all just adds to how cherished it is for the people who love
yes.
it.
Yeah, absolutely. So synopsis wise, Eric Draven and his fiancée are brutally murdered when he mysteriously returns from the dead with the help of a crow. It begins to guide him to his killers. And that's it. That's essentially what the movie is. So Eric Draven, him and his missus, they're massively in love. You can tell that from the movies, from the scenes, the little cutscenes they put in it. They are in love. But all that gets taken away from them when a gang of killers go to their apartment. They basically do some nasty things, kill them, and Eric Draven, with the power of a crow, comes back to life, and it essentially becomes a revenge story for him to kill all these people that did these nasty things. And it's absolutely incredible. So like we've already mentioned, this film, if we're going to go through it like this sort of thing, so aesthetically, this film is absolutely stunning. And we've already spoke a little bit about it as well. It has that 90s look. It's incredibly dark, gothic, grunge. It has sort of everything that you sort of want from these movies. But what I love about the aesthetic is that it really, like you were saying, it creates this environment, it creates this world that feels very comic booky, but yet at the same time feels real.
It feels real enough to believe, but
Yes.
not real enough to live in.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like when you look at, like, particularly when I think about the miniature shots of like the streets and the
Yeah.
buildings, they don't look quite real, but they don't look quite like cartoony.
Yes.
They fit into that very specific. And I'm not an absolute massive Tim Burton fan, but I know I've already mentioned the Tim Burton link. But there's a real uh, connection and kind of similarity there between how Gotham City is, particularly in the first two Batman films, where it doesn't feel quite real. It's kind of the wide shots of studio. They feel
Yeah.
like a studio, but you're willing to believe because it's done in such a way that it paints a world that you're willing to kind of participate in whilst you're watching it. And that's
Yeah.
really rare, I think. I think
Yeah.
it's quite, and I think the darkness helps. Yeah, it was a joy to watch again. It's been such a long time since I've sat down and watched it, and luckily I had it on Blu-ray, so because I couldn't find it on any streaming services. Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and like when it starts, because I'm just going back to where you mentioned the kind of overall plot, the crow thing, and it
Yeah.
starts with the young girl Sarah.
Yeah, I think it's Sarah. Yeah, it's like, I always forget her name because she's like the least
Yeah, it's
important one
Sarah.
of the movie in a way.
Yeah, yeah. But she does a monologue and it starts with, people once believed that a crow, blah blah blah,
Blah blah
comes
blah.
and gets your soul and lets you. People once believed that when you die, the crow takes your soul to the afterlife or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
But occasionally, if something awful has happened, the crow will
It
take you
sets up the
back.
movie.
yeah, whatever. But I was just wondering, and I haven't done any research about this, but what is that? Just entirely made up folklore for the film, or is there a
Yeah, I
culture
mean, I'm
where there is
sure.
this belief that a crow does a kind of soul thing?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, to be honest. It'd be quite interesting to look that up. But the problem is that even like if it wasn't, now people just all scholars, they'll be like, yeah, it was bloody real. Actually, this is all the shit that happens. Like
Yeah,
with the crows and stuff.
this is a
But it is
fact.
an interesting aspect. But it also
This
makes
is
it even
documentary.
better. Yeah, yeah. But it just makes it sort of like even more interesting as an idea that they sort of came up with it for the movie as well, because it's almost like this like a form of reincarnation, so to speak. Um, and
Yes,
but
yeah,
then
yeah,
once again, it leads into this, and what I love, this world building of a movie that is like a comic book movie. Like this is it, they walk such a fine line in this movie by creating the perfect sort of comic book movie. A film that's like based on something that's still loosely based on something, which obviously I'll get into a little bit as well later. But it is based on something, but loosely based on something, and they've changed what they needed to create a movie version of the book. And they do
yes.
like such a successful job. So um, it's interesting to see when they put things like that into movies, whether it's like a real thing or whether it's something that's like you're saying created for the world.
Yeah, I have a feeling that it's literally James O'Barr, the guy who wrote the graphic novel. I
Yeah,
think it's something that he's come up with. I don't
probably. Well,
believe
he's a
that
bloody
it's
genius. So
yeah, I don't
um,
believe it's based on like any existing folklore, like Norse folklore or anything. But I just wondered when I first when just because that's the first thing you hear in the film, and it was like some people once believed, and I was like, oh, I wonder if they've kind of taken it from I don't know, like the Iron Age, some or whatever. But
well,
yeah, it was
coming to a podcast near you, Brett,
yeah.
BP and Coops talk about folklore.
Yeah, yeah, we're going to do the Norse folklore podcast.
Yeah, yeah,
Specifically, any folklore revolved around
Norse
crows
floor,
and birds. Just bird. We'll just call it the
bird law,
birds. Bird law. Yeah,
bird
dangerous
law.
birds going to hell.
Yeah, and we're going to train crows and ravens to come and sit on our shoulders as we present it.
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's
what I
it.
think we need to do.
That's it. But like you were saying as well, and one of the things that I do want to talk about is you were mentioning obviously a scene from the start of the movie and so on. But this film is full of incredible scenes. Like this is scene after scene after scene of absolute like something that's an absolute pleasure to watch. Not just like aesthetically, yes, but you're like when you're talking about, as I said, and this is something that we're going to get into, but performances wise, unbelievable, incredible. And then you've got the idea of what's driving it. But everything works within the scenes that it's in. It goes from one set piece to another set piece, but every single time it goes from one to another, it's incredible, like what you're watching. Um, like I said, whether it's the dialogue, whether it's the character, whether it's a character driven scene and a dialogue scene between, Ernie Hudson and, Eric Draven, or whether it's an action piece, like you can't take your eyes off this movie, even if it's in the slower parts to the quicker parts. Um, so it's absolutely amazing. Some of my favourite scenes. I don't know if you've got any as well. Um, I love the scene in the pawn shop. I don't mean porn is in porn movie shop, but you know what I mean.
On with a
Um,
W.
yeah, porn with a W and an A. Yeah, I love that scene
Shit
because
on
it.
me. Shit on me.
Yeah, like you get some random weird dialogue, and then you get obviously the poetic sort of side of Eric Draven as a character when he's going
Yeah.
around saying these sort of poetic um, lines that he says throughout the movie that we obviously we say about as well. But that scene's
Well,
a really good
just
one.
just on that there's almost kind of a religious element
Yes,
to some of the things that he says as well, which definitely
yeah,
plays into the whole like 90s goth aesthetic and like dark abandoned churches and
yeah,
stuff. uh yeah, because that again was what made me think, oh, maybe there is something in this crow religious folklore thing.
Yeah.
But like I said, I haven't done any research about that, so I'll shut up about it now.
But also, and like as well as that, when you're saying that the religious side and stuff like that, once again, it's perfectly integrated into the movie. Like it doesn't see, it's not something that's preachy. It's not something that like is
No, it's
standing
not
out to be like,
shoehorned in.
yeah. And you don't like when he's saying it, you don't be like, well, that's fucking weird, like way of saying something. It's just like part of his character, you know, and
Yeah,
who
I
he
mean,
is
in his
now.
defense, he has just been brought back to life by a crow. So,
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
his points of reference are slightly different to normal, average human
To
beings.
normal humans. Yeah, exactly. He's
Yeah.
now a crow man.
Yeah, he's the crow follower. I don't know why he's called the crow when there is a crow. He should be like he should be like the crow man or the crow bar. Crow
Well, they don't
bar.
ever reference him as the crow man in the movie, I don't think, but they should do.
No, they only ever really call him Eric.
Yeah.
Eric Raven.
Eric.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I'll let you get on with what you were saying about the best
I've forgotten what I was saying.
well.
Oh yeah. Anyway, yeah. So the scene. So I love the pawn shop scene, because that is one of the scenes that has like a driving element of emotion, and depicting emotion on different levels. Like you've got, Eric Draven going in there as an absolute badass. Then it's a scene that becomes about him trying to find this emotional connection with his lost partner, and trying to find the ring and trying to get that piece of her back. And then also it's an action scene as well, and it ends on one of the coolest sort of explosions put on cinema ever, because you've got the building blowing up and he's standing right in front of the building as it blows up, and you can still see him
sick.
there in the flames. And that's one of the movie explosions that always stands out to me as like one of the best, because it's the impact that it has on the screen. Like it's not just a random explosion, like a car's not blowing up or something like that. Like there's a reason why the explosion's there. It happens, but it's the way that they shoot it, the way that it looks, and the fact that once again it gives this supernatural, this immortal element to the Crow, to Brandon Lee, well, to Eric Draven as a character, because you're like, well, he's just going to get blown up, but obviously he doesn't.
Yeah, he looks absolutely invincible. That is like it's a mighty hero shot, isn't it? Because that's absolute chaos behind him. The thing about that scene to me, though, is that he's like, "I'll go and tell the others that I'm going to absolutely fucking kill the shit out of them."
Right? Yeah, everybody's definitely
the shot bloke.
Yeah.
And then
Mario.
he doesn't. I mean, there's a fair chance that bloke isn't even going to survive to be able to do that.
Exactly.
The crow just walks away, blows this whole place up, and somehow the guy manages to get out. But really, the likelihood is that he would have just died in that explosion, and then, we wouldn't have had the weird scene with the eyeballs later on.
No, exactly. Well, one of the things that I thought about when I was watching this movie, and I'll get back to sort of the scenes bit in a minute as well. But one of the things that I started thinking about is that in the movie, he really reminds me of like a perfect combination of the Batman and the Joker. Because you've got the Batman who's there, essentially, out there for the justice, so to speak, like he's trying to do the right thing. And essentially, the intentions of Eric Draven are good in a way. The thing is, it's not necessarily all good, because he's still going around murdering people, but he's murdering the right people rather than the wrong people. He's trying to right people's wrongs. And that sort of side of it reminds me a little bit of Batman. But then he's got the Joker inside of him, and that's what you were saying as well, because he has this anarchy side to it, this anarchistic side. I can't say the word, but that side to him as well. Like you're saying, like he wants this guy to go and deliver a message, but he just blows the shit out.
He nearly kills him. Yeah,
and nearly kills him.
He's kind of reckless because he's so obsessed with what he's,
and the way that he looks
there to achieve.
Yeah, the way that he looks, he's aesthetic with obviously the makeup as well. The way that he does come across on so many points is like a loose cannon. There's, it's almost, he's like, it's almost as if he's like somebody that will like put gasoline on the floor and flick a cigarette, and then but he doesn't know what's going to happen. You know what I mean? Like it's either going to catch a light or it's not. But it's not. He doesn't give a fuck about it.
Yeah. I thought very similarly that he was a combination of Robert Smith and the T-1000.
Yeah, like an unstoppable
like a gothic
force.
Terminator.
Yeah, gothic Terminator. That's a better thing. The fact that that's not on the poster for the movie is
Well,
a
you know,
travesty.
the point that you're saying, and this is what I think fundamentally stopped this film being an out and out horror, is the fact that he's the protagonist. He's an
Yeah,
anti-hero. You want him to win. You want him to go around and kill everyone. Whereas when you look at like Nightmare on Elm Street, the person going
yeah,
around killing everyone, he's killing innocent, just randoms. Whereas
yeah,
we know all of these people are rapists and killers
yeah,
and
nasty
bad
bastards.
people. So, and that is it's such a simple, like almost basic change to a character, but it changes the whole perception of the film because he's like the Punisher. He's a
Yeah,
badass good guy who's actually
yeah.
dead,
Who's actually dead, and he's got a mate
which is
that's a
actually the
crow.
same as the Punisher, actually, isn't he?
Well, the
Isn't the Punisher
Punisher's
dead?
no, the Punisher's not dead. They just thought he was.
Oh right, he's not definitely
Yeah,
dead.
no, he's not
This
definitely
guy's
dead.
definitely dead. The
The
crow,
crow's
he's
definitely dead.
definitely dead.
Yeah, he is. But yeah, so like you got the pawn shop as well. Obviously, the iconic scene where he's actually putting on the makeup itself.
Yeah,
You know that whole scene, and then I think at that point you've got the Cure. I think the Cure is playing on that bit as well, and it's just such like
yeah.
and obviously we're going to get into the whole soundtrack stuff as well. But that scene, and I just love it. Just when he's putting it
Oh, well,
on,
that
but it's
makes me
just
think about the bit when he gets that mask and you get the
yeah,
flashback,
yeah,
and he puts that mask on and he takes it off and goes boo. And I watched it and I thought, that's so shit. No couple would ever do that because it's so shit and cringe. And then I thought about it. I was like, that is exactly what actual couple, because it's such a like
yeah,
Hollywoody thing to do
yeah,
to
yeah, yeah,
flashback
yeah,
someone seeing a thing around the house that, but it is the thing that if we had one of them lying around the
yeah.
house at some point, I would annoy my wife by doing something like that. I
Just
mean,
putting
she
a
probably
crow
wouldn't find
mask
it
on.
quite as funny as Shelley
Yeah.
did, but like,
No.
yeah, it is. I was trying to kind of like look at it like, oh, you know, where can I kind of take the piss a bit? And it's actually really hard because it is such a
Yes.
well made.
Well, that's
I
it because
lovingly take the piss, obviously, because I
yeah,
love it. I wouldn't be here talking about it otherwise. But yeah, that scene with the makeup, and the the um, the thing I haven't understood, and I might be skipping ahead here, but I'm just going to say it anyway. I don't know why they're bombing an arcade. The bad guy. What are they? What's the problem with their? You know, they bomb
I think it's just one of those movie things
because it's
where
Devil's Night and they set load of fires.
yeah.
But why are they spending a fortune on really sophisticated bomb equipment to blow it?
Yeah, I know. I think
It's
I mean, unless it's something to do with like outside of the realm of what's happening within the movie and like a drug dealing or something like that to
yeah,
do
or it
with it.
could be some kind of racketeering where
Yeah,
the arcade people haven't given them the money that to protect them or something like that.
yeah,
It's probably something like that. But the fact that it's a bomb, that's the
yeah.
only real plot weakness I
Bit
found.
Looney
Is like
Tunes.
yeah, it should just be petrol like all the. But obviously
Yeah,
they
yeah,
got to a point where they're like, well, we've already done petrol explosions. That's that kind of thing's already, because that's what the Crow does at the pawn shop. So they're like,
yeah,
we need to do something to differentiate this explosion. Otherwise, it's just an explosion that it's going to be a little bit not necessarily boring, but they want to differentiate it. But yeah, that did make me laugh a little bit because I was
just
like,
get a bit of a
hang on, that
TikTok
bomb
bomb.
looks like it looks like it's straight out of like a
Roger
Die
Rabbit.
Hard or something. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like Hans Gruber was prepared it
yeah,
for them and then sent it on to Tintin. Here you
yeah.
go,
That's it.
take this into
But
the arcade,
a
will
lot of
you?
the thing, and I think it sort of touches on to like what you were saying almost earlier with the scene about the whole mask scene is that within a movie, you've got to try and make people understand this world, but in a short amount of time. So like with the
Yeah,
whole like sort of Shelley thing and where like she's like, I'm fucking loving this bit with the mask and it's bloody
yeah,
absolutely
you're the
hilarious.
funniest
You're
guy.
the funniest person that's ever existed. Please do this again.
Yeah.
Um, but it's also it's trying to create that
It's a
world
little
of
bit
like
over the top, but it's lovely and it's really effective. Yeah.
yeah, because they're trying to let within short, you know, like short little moments, show that everybody that these were the people that were more in love than anybody that's ever existed.
Yeah, and the
Um,
thing that they often they don't make enough out of is they were going to get married the following day. They were going to
yeah,
get married on Halloween. That was
yeah,
their,
that
and
was their,
so
that was their,
obviously that was obviously a purposeful thing to imply. Oh, they are quite alternative because why
yes,
would you
yeah,
get
yeah,
married
and it,
on
yeah,
Halloween? So they're obviously into, not necessarily into the occult, but like have an interest in to a certain degree the macabre or the kind of dark,
Yes.
gothic
Goth.
things.
Yeah.
And yeah, because the whole Devil's Night being the night before Halloween was just, yeah. I mean, I
I'm going to
hadn't,
start.
obviously I
I'm going to
knew it.
start celebrating Devil's Night as well as Halloween.
You want me to make you a really sophisticated bomb?
Yeah, yeah,
With
yeah,
a timer
yeah.
and like it comes in a briefcase so you can go down the arcade.
Yeah, do it like that. As long as it's a proper TikTok one, then we're all right. It's got a little thing that timer on it and everything. But yeah, so obviously you've got that scene, like I said, putting on the makeup, iconic. The iconography of it because he's putting on this incredible face paint. To become this character that we know and love. But one of the other scenes that I really, really love, and it's another example of how expertly crafted this movie is the scene where he goes into the house where Darla and which is the awful mum of the movie, and her sort of floozy, her boyfriend is there, and that's the scene where he gets shot in the hand, and you sort of almost see the extent. It's one of the first sort of proper times you see the extent of his immortality, so to speak, like where he puts it out in front of the camera, and then the whole sort of closes up, and then he's like, and he's bloody loving it, and now I absolutely love that because he's laughing his head off. And once again, it becomes that anarchistic. I don't know the word. That side of him, anyway. You see that come out. But what I love about that scene is, once again, it's another thing that this film does incredibly, where it's showing these sort of like action sort of scenes, and then it has a proper dialogue scenes, and then it becomes like a really emotional scene because he then starts making the morphine come out of her arm, and it's essentially saying, look, you've got a daughter, stop being a shit mum.
And that isn't that I don't know if that's a biblical phrase, but it's mother is something. It's obviously some kind of, I'm assuming, a pre-existing passage around what a mother is there to do and how important that is. I'm not convinced if it wasn't a religious one, but yeah, and you see it come out of
all
that,
the morphine coming out.
I noted that. That's probably my favourite scene.
That's mine as well.
For a similar reason.
Yeah.
The one thing I was going to talk about, and I mean, there's so much to go through. I'm not going to keep saying, "Oh, we'll get to it," because we probably won't. So I'm going to mention it now. Is Brandon Lee's physical acting in this film is absolutely incredible, and that scene is a testament to it. When he comes in and he plays around with the light bulb on his forehead at the beginning of that scene, when he's just kind of being menacing, and there's just this lone light bulb, and like, I don't know how much of that was the director encouraging to do that, how much that was him reacting, but whoever's responsible, or whatever combination of things that needed to manifest for it to manifest in the way that it did, it's so encapsulating, it's so creepy, and fucking brilliant. It really is. Like, it's kind of intriguing, like how he uses his body so effectively throughout all that film, and that's just a really good example of it. Just that playing with the light bulb thing at the beginning of that, before he kind of confronts, or as he's confronting whichever one of the bad guys it is. I can't remember.
Yeah, I can never remember.
That is.
I don't know if it's Fun Boy or something. Fun Boy.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah.
I also didn't notice until this watch through the kind of joke that someone says about the fact that they've all given themselves stupid nicknames like pirates. Someone said that somewhere in the dialogue, and I'd never picked that up before.
No, somebody does. You're right. Yeah, somebody does.
It.
Yeah, somebody does mention.
I think it's
that,
one of the police officers.
Yeah, I think so. And you're right. And that, I love that little sort of like almost awareness, fourth wall breaking almost, where you're like, they're almost taking the piss about the characters that are within the movie with their stupid names.
They do that, and they also take the piss out of one of the police officers, because when he turns up, and Tintin, the first one to die, who's just got like 9 knives in him, and he's on the trolley, he's coming away, and the chief police officer comes in, sees him being dragged away, and goes, "Is that the victim?" A fucking obvious, of course, that's the fucking. It's a bloke
idiot
with 9 knives in him. Like, there's obviously blood everywhere. Like, that's they've obviously, that's such a stupid thing to say. They're kind of making a joke of the joke character because
Yeah,
it's making it so obvious that Ernie Hudson's boss is a complete prick.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it's
He's an
almost
absolute
too
moron.
obvious. But
Yeah,
like I say, because of this world building, you just you accept it all. You kind
yeah,
of, it is comic
exactly.
book. That's like I guess, it's such an extreme that it has that comic book aesthetic, and yeah, you kind of forgive a lot of things that in other films you wouldn't because
Yeah,
of
because you'd
how
be
well
laughing at it. Yeah.
how well you're drawn into the art, the environment.
Yeah, that's it. Well let's get into that because obviously that's one thing that I want to talk about as well. Is this film is like an almost like a time capsule in a way where we don't get this very often anymore. Even in movies, these shitty Marvel movies that have 1,000 characters in them, all somehow blend into one and don't even feel any different. Whereas when we in the 90s, 80s, everything like that, we had movies where every single character in it was a character and they were an individual and they felt real and not real at the same time. Like you're saying, like this is a heightened sense of realism, these
Yeah,
characters and so on. But this film is one of those examples where there is not a bad performance in this entire movie from anyone. So you can start off like I feel like this is like almost like a redeeming for or the Ghostbusters for Ernie Hudson in a way because Ernie Hudson is
yeah, he got some
absolutely
fucking dialogue.
exactly like Ernie Hudson's a great actor anyway. He's fantastic,
Yeah,
and he is one of those actors that doesn't necessarily get the recognition that he deserves in a way. And I think one of the standing examples of that is I think the first scene that you see in him in the hot dog stand and
yeah,
he's like complaining about like what to put on first, the mustard or the ketchup, and he wants it on, and then he just takes it from the guy to do it, and that isn't like a scripted thing, you know what I mean? Like you might have in the script or something say like, oh, they're doing this, but the taking it and then doing this and all of that, that's improvising and stuff like that. And that's when you're like, oh, okay, you're watching something, you're watching somebody that knows what they're doing, and that helps elevate the movie. So Ernie
yeah,
Hudson, absolutely fantastic in this movie. It's great to see the fact that he has a bigger role in the movie and a really obviously integral one. Then you've got all of the hooligans, the guys. I don't know if they've got a full name for who they are, but obviously they're all the ones. You've got Funboy, Tintin. You've got them shouting "Fire it up" and everything like that. But individually, they are so fucking good at being horrible bastards, but yet each individually being their own character, that it's such an enjoyable watch because then obviously it creates this sort of almost comic book world
yeah.
where each of them is like a comic book character. I love seeing David Patrick Kelly. You may or may not know, but and this is what I always find really interesting about his performance because he was in a film called The Warriors, which is a film from the 70s. And he's notoriously known because his line in it is "Warriors come out to play," and that's
I didn't realize that's the same guy.
yeah. So obviously that was an awful impression, but that's the guy, and that's what he's like commonly known for. But for me, what he's known for is that scene when he's tied to the car, and that's also one of my other favorite scenes in the movie because he's one of those guys that's a proper character actor and he fully immerses himself into sort of that role. So when he's in that scene and he's tied and that he knows that he's going to die and he's realized that the crow is Eric Draven, and he's like, we killed you and your girlfriend stuff. And he's basically in almost disbelief. I always sit there and I'm like, I can't believe how fucking good this guy is because he's making me feel like he knows that he's going to die. He can't believe what's going on, and that's like the definition of like a character actor to me. But it's also, as I say, what's interesting is the fact that for me, the forefront in my brain isn't the whole Warriors come out to play line, which is iconic. It's always that scene is the thing that plays in my head rather than the Warriors thing. So he's amazing. But just everybody in the cast is absolutely phenomenal. Obviously, Michael Wincott is amazing. Is obviously the main villain because he is a true villain. He's absolutely coked off his face doing as much drugs. There's
What's
fucking
that guy's name?
in real life. I can't remember in the movie.
Kind of
He's obviously,
vampire-y one. The one with
yeah,
the woman who's they say it's his sister, but they're obviously getting on and then obviously
yeah,
not
they're like
related.
incest and all that sort of stuff. I can't remember his name in the movie, but I just know it's obviously Michael Wincott in real life. Um,
She has the best. She has the best line of the film. Uh,
what,
when she goes, "Pretty."
oh yeah, that one.
It's
Well,
just
that's
the
not my.
best.
It's
It's
good. Well,
so
it's the way she
creepy.
does it. Yeah, he's very
Yeah,
creepy. Obviously Tony Todd. He's cool as fuck in this movie. Obviously, Candyman in himself. He's in this movie and he's absolutely amazing. He plays like the bodyguard sort of guy. But he's just cool as fuck in this movie. Obviously, until he dies. But the performances in this movie are amazing. And the reason why I wanted to spend a bit of time talking about this, like you know, and you were as well about Brandon Lee, is so I have a list on my phone that is the performances that to me personally are the most inspirational ones to me, like of all time. And Brandon Lee's performance in this as Eric Draven as the Crow is one of my favorite and most inspirational performances that has ever been on screen. And it blows my mind of how good he is in this movie. Every single time I watch it, I am in awe of every single thing that he says, every single thing that he does. Like you're saying, like the whole stuff with the light and stuff, little nuances, little things like that that add to the character. Every time he has this like sort of you know, this smile on his face, you know, there's not many people that can pull off wearing makeup and look that good as well. um, as well,
it's the
you
way
know.
he holds himself. It
Yes,
just
his physicality
his
and everything.
posture.
Yeah,
That you know, and there are those bits where he has memories and they're actually physically painful to him, and then he's
yes,
reacting to them. And
yeah,
again, it's one of those things that seems so over the top, but you're so in it. It's
yes,
done to absolute perfection that you owe- you 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 accept it's over the top, but you just kind of digest it anyway because
yeah. Because
he's
he's so good, you actually feel his pain because he's
when he
acting. You know, like
swings through
he's
the window,
yeah, one of the coolest
like
fucking bits ever.
yeah, and he comes back with the blood, but and the way he lands from that, it's fucking like just
Yeah,
like Spider-Man, the way he
yeah,
lands
yeah, yeah,
there, like
yeah.
it's that's when he's like, right, I've got ownership of this pain now. I'm gonna make you fuckers pay. It's
Yeah,
brilliant. It's
exactly.
absolutely
And he is
incredible.
obviously aesthetically one of the coolest looking motherfuckers that's ever been on
Yeah,
film. Like it's so fucking cool. I mean, like literally, you know, the amount of times I've gone as the fucking Crow because it's well easy, but for Halloween. Um,
yeah,
and but he, you know, he looks so cool. He embodies the character itself. And you know, this is a guy that essentially started out only really getting roles because he was Bruce Lee's son. You know, he had the
yeah,
name, and when you get that, you know, like you're almost essentially born into the business. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be any good. And before
no,
this as well, you know, he was only doing like he had a film with like Dolph Lundgren that was all right, and little films and stuff. And a lot of them were like, we want him to try and be like his dad, the next martial artist, you know,
yes,
in the movies and stuff. And the fact that he got this role and did it, and this is the type of thing that creates, you know, an icon, you know, like a
100%.
you know, if he'd have, you know, lived on, he would this would have propelled him into movie stardom. Now you don't know what comes after that. You don't know whether it means it's going to be like Hollywood movie after Hollywood movie, or whether he's going to be sticking to these sort of cult gems and so on. You don't know. And the fact that we've got this is, you know, we can only be blessed and thankful that we've got this movie. But
Yeah,
there is, you know, this is one of the performances that if anybody says to me, give me a definition of a perfect performance in regards to you know, dialogue, how to say it and when to say it, and how to emphasize something, or whether it's the physicality, like you were saying, and how to move your body, or if you're going into a room, what could you do that's a little bit different than the normal standing there and doing nothing?
yeah.
This is one of those examples where you like watch Brandon Lee in The Crow, and you will see a a master at work at so early on in his career that was quite clearly more than just you know, the name that came with it.
100%. And some of the way he delivers dialogue and some of the dialogue choices, and I don't know how much of them were his, how much is directly from the the, the graphic novel and how much is done by the script editors and whatever. But like, there's the bit when he goes, "Take a shot, fun boy. You got to be dead bang."
Yeah.
It's really creepy. What does that even mean? That's not a phrase, is it? Dead bang?
No, I mean,
Do
it
people
don't.
say,
No, I
oh,
mean, not that I know of.
it's now when it's such a strong line now
Yeah.
because it kind of doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And it is,
And
it's
and
all
it's the
delivered
way
so
he
well. His
says it.
performance is just, yeah, it's weird. It's just got, everything has character to it. The character has sub character within it.
Yeah.
Everything just has such such strength to it and
Yeah.
such unique and style.
Yeah, and like you were saying, it's like this, there's so many like sub parts to his character because it's about the anger side of it, of the anger that he has towards these people, but also the fact that he's still him and he's a good human being. And quite clearly, before all this happened, he was a really nice person, you know, and he was in
Yes.
love and he had friends and stuff. But he's also fighting this anger side where he's just like, I've still got to kill them. But yeah, like some of the lines in it would like we've said as well, that some of the lines in this, the dialogue, if it was put in somebody else's hands and somebody else was saying them, would just sound fucking corny and stupid. But when he turns around and says things like, it can't rain all the time, it's the way that he says it, the look on his face, the expression, the way that he's doing it, you know, like you believe it, you know what I mean? Like he has this believability where you're drawn into this guy, this character, where you just want nothing but for him to do, and you know, to get his revenge and do what he's doing. Or the line like, victims aren't we all, you know, that comes from a different place. Or, you know, the way he says it, the way the emotion comes from a different place than the whole you know, it can't rain all the time, you know. And to be able to sell that sort of dialogue is nothing but credit to how incredible he was, basically.
And that it can't rain all the time, because obviously that's the name of one of his band's songs.
Yes. Yeah.
And that led me to believe, and Sally, or Sally's mum, had the vinyl of that.
Yeah.
So how big were the band that he was in?
Yeah, but that's it. I think they were quite
they must
popular.
have been signed.
Yeah,
so they must have been like a local, kind of essentially like a local goth rock band, which again opens up and makes it understood why that social kind of circle, those kind of people were drawn to it. People who liked local, like grungy kind of bands. The lead character is essentially a lead singer of one of those bands. Not that they don't really expand on it, but that's a really cool element, and it's kind of it draws people in because there were loads of people who were in those kinds of bands who would have watched it and like felt almost a kind of kinship to the character through that, which is cool.
Yeah.
And the
and
song
also that
itself in the credits is fucking awful. The song "It Can't Rain All," the song's called "It Can't Rain All the Time," and it's by Jane Siberry. The lead, the vocals in the chorus are "It won't rain all the time," which isn't what it is. Terrible. That's I know we might talk about
we'll talk about that now because that's the next thing I want to talk about anyway. So one of the things that you can't not talk about this, and this was, you know, obviously in the 90s it was such a huge thing for movies, was that this film has one of the greatest soundtracks ever made. Not just the fact that how they integrate it into the movie with this amazing soundtrack, and then they've got like bands playing within the movie, which is cool as fuck. But the fact that this film is one that utilizes like big bands, you know, from the 90s, and you know, it was that extra marketing aspect. It was that extra thing that made the movies money back then, where you had these big bands make soundtracks, and yet somehow these bands always end up making absolutely amazing songs for soundtracks. And I don't know how it happens. Like they seem to like almost elevate themselves to make amazing songs. You've got songs like I've already mentioned from The Cure. You got Burn from The Cure, which is actually one of my favorite Cure songs. I think it's an amazing song. Suits the movie perfectly. Obviously, you've got 9 Inch Nails, and that's a fucking amazing song.
It's a cover of Joy Division, isn't it? That one.
Yes. Yeah, that's it. Rage Against the Machine have got a song on it, and that's a Rage Against the Machine song that actually like starts completely different to their normal sort of music songs that they do. You know, there's so many good songs on this soundtrack that it makes me really miss the 90s when you had like things like remember like the Godzilla soundtrack, and
It's
that
around
had
it was the time of good soundtracks.
yes,
That doesn't exist anymore. You know, you might
no,
get a lead single that's tied to a movie, but like Judgment Night soundtrack, that's amazing. I don't think the film's any good, but the soundtrack was basically became the. I don't know if you know much about the Judgment Night soundtrack, but it was where they got a bunch of hip hop artists and a bunch of rock artists, and then got them all to collaborate, and basically like unwittingly formed the beginnings of what new metal became 10 years later. But like
right,
the 90s soundtracks was a massive the Batman soundtracks,
yeah.
like the early ones, even the latter ones, actually, like the Batman and Robin soundtrack. The soundtrack's actually pretty good. The film's
Yeah, I mean the
utter
fact that
garbage, but
we lived in a world where Seal Kiss from the Rose was on a Batman soundtrack is fucking mental, but also
yeah,
one of the greatest songs ever made. So
yeah, yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah, so
it
I
was
think it earns its place in the pantheon of what of 90s soundtracks, and it's one of it's in the top 10. It definitely is. It's just
oh yeah,
it's
absolutely.
uh, and it's one of those soundtracks that doesn't just live on its own. It is embedded in the film, and they're kind of one and the same. And you I don't imagine many people have listened to the soundtrack and not watched the film. And
Yeah,
equally, I
yeah,
don't imagine
exactly.
many
Yeah.
people have watched the film and then never listened to any of the songs from the soundtrack, because it appeals to people who like cult things.
Yeah.
So you're kind of
Yeah.
all in, or it's gone over your head.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So one of the things that I thought would be quite cool to do, because you know, yeah, this is based on a graphic novel, by James O'Barr. If you've never, you know, if you're somebody that's watched the movie and you've never read the graphic novel, it is a fucking amazing graphic novel, amazing art. It's a graphic novel that really is a great way of somehow depicting emotion or making you feel like forms of emotion just by you know, I'm not somebody that reads a lot. I do love comics. I do love graphic novels and stuff. And a lot of that is because obviously the visual side of it. You know, I'm a visual person, not that sort of stuff. But it's a great graphic novel. So if you have watched the movie, but you've never ventured into the actual novel itself, then I really do recommend it. But I've written down some of the differences of the book and the movie itself because I thought that would be a bit of fun. So one of the things is that the book ends with Eric in his grave with Shelley. So within the movie, it's sort of ends. He's like, oh, I've fallen over onto the grave, and then that's
I made
sort of
my own way back in, thanks. Yeah,
yeah, I'll figure it out. But you don't need to see it cut scene.
yeah.
The movie centers around Devil's Night, which we've mentioned, which is not in the book. So
Well,
yeah,
that just before you continue on that is problematic, because it's confusing as to what day it is, because they have breakfast, so you're led
yeah,
to believe it's a second day,
of
like
Devil's Night.
yeah, so you're led to believe it's actually Halloween. It's moved on to the
Yes,
next day, and then I think it's someone sits down and says, "Oh, Devil's Night is upon us," but it's like, well, that was last night because you've already done all of that. So yeah,
yeah.
there is some confusion there, and I
Well, you
think
know
it
what
was
it is though.
obviously what
It's all the bloody drugs going around. They don't know what the fuck's going on.
they don't know what's going on. Yeah,
They
it's
don't
all
know
one
what's going
fucking
on.
day. They've
That's it.
they've
That's
had Devil's Night for 6 weeks. Six
6
weeks. They've
weeks.
just been at it.
6 weeks.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's it. What day is
just
it today?
making bombs and chucking
Making
them into
bombs.
arcades. But yeah,
The another one,
it's
Eric
obviously something that
Draven's
they put in to make the film to to to, to
to
allow
fill it
the
out.
script to work in a 90-minute or however long the
Yeah,
film is.
yeah, yeah,
It's a vehicle to make, but it is flawed because it doesn't fully. The timeline isn't clear,
yeah, yeah. You're
so
right.
that's one
Uh,
negative. Well, it's not
um,
negative. It doesn't make the film negative, but it's just an
no, no, it doesn't
observation.
mean like you watch it and you're like,
Confusing.
well, this is shit now.
Yeah, forget
Um,
it.
forget it. Draven's last name is not mentioned in the book. He doesn't. He's known it. I think they mention it. It's Eric, but they don't say that it's Eric Draven.
Well, that's
Um,
another point, because why isn't he called the Raven if he's got the name Ray? He's got
well, I think that's the point
Raven.
of it. I think that's the point of it. First of all, it almost makes no sense because obviously it's not a raven, it's a crow. But also,
Yeah.
I think it's literally a play on the fact that it's like Craven is raven or something. I think so for the movie. But also, yeah, it's called the crow. It's not called the raven. So,
Yeah. Well, doesn't make
Eric
sense.
struggles to remember what really happened in the movie. But he's fully aware of what happened in his purpose in the book. So yeah, so within the book, he doesn't forget. He still like fully understands that like at the start of the book, this is what happens. All happens in a completely different way, which I've got here as well, I think. But it happens all in a different way, and he knows about it. He knows his intentions. He knows his mission, and he goes upon it. That's basically it.
I'd say that's inconsistent in the film because there are points where he kind of knows loads of stuff that you don't even understand how he knows because he knows about the weird eyeball sister, but
Yeah,
we haven't heard anyone tell him about that.
it's because of the
So
bloody
yeah,
crow. That's why the crow is
yeah.
wise. He knows everything.
I was told,
Um,
yeah,
the book does not include that he loses his powers if the crow is destroyed, because that's one
right.
thing they hint at within the movie. Um, in the movie, they are attacked in their apartment, but in the book, they are attacked in the car. So near the start of the book, yeah, it's basically they're in a car, and that's where they both get killed in the car rather than in their apartment. And the last one I've got is oh no, that was the last one, so ignore me. But there's loads more. But as I said, I would honestly recommend the graphic novel if you like reading, graphic novels, comics, all that sort of stuff. The Crow's amazing. There's a reason why they made a film based on it.
In the book, does this
Yeah,
also
go
happen
on.
in the book? Because he kills all of the people who actually
Yeah, yeah,
attacked him, and then he's about to just go back to the grave. He's like, "I'm
yes.
done." But then the bloke whose name we don't know, then he takes Sarah, and then he's like, "Oh, I better go and sort out that one then because he's a
Yeah.
prick." Is that the same in the book as in
I
the
think
film?
so, but I don't think it plays out the same way. I haven't read
Right.
it for a
Okay.
bit. I do need to go back to it. But I think it's the
I'd
fact that
completely
it
forgotten
happened.
about that bit. I just thought, oh, he just kills all of them and the
Yeah,
boss
and then it goes
because
back.
why wouldn't you kill the boss because he's in charge of them? But no,
Yeah,
he's literally like getting all the mud ready to just tuck himself back in the grave, and
little
then
duvet of mud.
he's like, Eric, help! And then he's like, oh, hang on, this will have to wait. I've got to
Hang
go
on, I've got
sort
to go
out
and
this
help my
tree.
mate.
Yeah,
Yeah. So one thing that obviously I always do on the audio podcast, which I've also been doing on these new video podcasts as well, is some facts. Number one, Brandon Lee was unhappy as how his face paint was applied. So he and the director decided that Lee would put it on before going to bed at night. So he basically, before he went to bed, he put the makeup on and then he would go in the morning and then it had that sort of more like a weathered sort of look. Once again, it's a cool little integration to how much, how important the character to Brandon Lee was, basically. Um, Number two, Alex Proyas, the director, originally wanted the film to film the movie in black and white, like the book, but was told no. He's not doing that.
it's nearly black and white though, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's
it's not
so
far away.
he's done. I think it was a good decision because what they've managed to do is make those scenes, like particularly like the flash. I mainly think of the film almost in black and white, and the
Yeah,
color is really associated with the flashbacks, and that's really
yes,
strong because it makes all of the kind of loving, tender moments even more memorable because
yeah,
they
and
are
everything
so
like
washed with color when everything else
yeah.
is so kind of void of it.
Yeah, the cinematography, the look, the aesthetic to this movie is such a strong element to it that every scene, like I said, it almost feels like every scene is almost individual and has its own sort of look and its style. Apart from the fact that everywhere it's fucking raining, but yeah,
Can't
it
rain
can't
all the
rain all the
time.
time. Exactly. Number three, as the film was incomplete after Brandon Lee's on-set tragic death, the rest of the film scenes needed were completed using groundbreaking CGI and body doubles. So what they basically had to do is that any scenes they had filmed or to try and complete the movie, they would basically they used cutting edge technology to put his face from other scenes and so on and morph it onto other people's faces or stunt doubles. And it looks, I mean, incredible. Like you don't know, like it never,
You wouldn't
like
know.
if you,
You
yeah,
wouldn't
if you
know.
didn't know that, you know, if I had never read that and you had never heard of that, then you wouldn't know. They done such an amazing job of doing what they did. Number 4, the book's author, James O'Barr, has stated that when he met with Hollywood executives about the movie being made, originally they wanted it to be a musical starring Michael Jackson.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Like, imagine that. Well, he'd be like, it can't rain all the time. Like, it would have been, I mean, Shimona. It would have been fucking awful. As much as I love, you know, like Michael Jackson's music, I don't think that turning The Crow into a musical would have worked.
Take a shot, fun boy. You got me dead. Bang.
Exactly, yeah, it would be amazing. Or you can, like, he would be like, when they're shooting at him in that thing, he'd just be moonwalking around that the table, going, "Shimona."
Give it to the window. Put that down there.
They would have cut the film and just put in the Smooth Criminal music video.
Yeah, if he'd have died on set,
but just put The Crow over it.
Yeah, and then just put Joe Pesci at the end.
Yeah,
from the Moonwalker movie. Yeah,
and the last fact that I've got is, even though the movie is called The Crow, none of the birds in the movie were actually crows; they were ravens. Because ravens are the cleverest bloody birds, so they had to, and they're bigger as well. So they got ravens,
bigger, yeah, better on screen.
Yes, so they got ravens because they're bloody clever. They're cleverer than the crows, and they understand more stuff.
I bet some twitchers, when they first watched that, when I say twitchers, I mean like the original meaning of twitchers, which is like bird watchers, watch that film and within 2 minutes, like, well, fuck this, because that's a raven for a start.
I thought I was watching a movie about crows here, and now they're shoving ravens in my face.
Yeah, the first thing you see is a fucking raven. Yeah,
that's it. Well, there we have it.
I've got some notes as well.
Go on. Oh yeah, go on. Yeah. So go through some of yours.
Yeah, well, they're not facts. These are just unanswered questions, right? Okay,
right,
so one of them.
Well, I'm not going to be able to answer them, but I'll listen.
Well, no, just interesting. Like, yeah, not question. I know you didn't make it. Like, I'm not going to expect you to have the answers, but these are just open questions.
I was just a consultant at 9 years old.
First of all, how does the crow that we've now found out is a fucking raven? Well, when Eric comes back from the grave, how does the crow know where all these crows are? Has it been scoping out all the bins? Because it takes him to like all these bins where he then
remember, he can
fly.
He's a bird, so he can fly. So you never know if
has he spent all day just flying around going, because Eric's going to crop up tonight?
Well, because I mean, the crow,
a costume.
You don't know that this isn't like the crow's job. Like he could be like the crow's job could be.
Should have been a magpie. If he's going around looking and taking stuff,
the magpie.
He'd be called the fucking magpie. But yeah, I just because he comes back to life, and then the crow's like, eh, and then it's just like, and then he opens the bin and finds trousers.
There's loads of cool clothes in it. Yeah, it would have been. I tell you something, it would have been a different film if it was like a crow, but it was fashion conscious.
Yeah, because then just took him to Dolce and Gabbana. It was just like, get in there.
Next thing you know, the crow's walking around like Mr. T, with chains everywhere.
It's set in Milan. And,
right, what's your next one?
So crow flying around in bin. Why does she have a spring bride catalogue when their wedding was the 31st of October? There you go.
Good
Think
point.
about that one. Maybe she got given it. Maybe. She was a bit gothy. I feel like it was maybe a gift, like hand-me-down, or she nicked it from the dentist. Probably the dentist. The bloke driving the little Fiat Panda who runs into one of the bad guy, the thick bad guy, gets out, having clearly just literally fucking run someone over, and he's just angry at him. He's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Like, the bloke, he could be dead. And the bloke,
he's just angry.
Yeah, and that car chase thing's really a bit odd because you don't the stupid one, whose name I forget. You don't really know how he knows what's actually going on with his mate, because all that happened was he got out of the car, went into the shop, and then the car was gone.
And he sees him, doesn't he? He sees him through the window.
He kind of sees that
The
The
crow's
crow in
got
the
the
back,
gun
does
to him.
he? Yeah. Oh, he does. Oh, well, there we go. That makes sense. And
I've
the only
answered
other
one.
question I've got is why? Yeah, yeah. The only other question I've got is why, whenever there's a band playing, why can't they finish welding whatever it is that they're doing at the back of the stage? There's a bloke welding
Yeah,
constantly. It's like surely you fixed it by now. Like
he's
each
fixed the
time there's
job.
another band up, they just there's this bloke just welding behind all the bands. And it
Well,
looks cool, so that's
it
why.
look, yeah.
This
That's I
doesn't
think
really.
that's why. Yeah, either that or he's just some guy on set who was just like, oh, I like doing this, and he's just decided to fucking weld for
Yeah,
for
maybe they
however
were
long they.
building the set still, and they went, "Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
actually, can you just stay there? Keep doing that." But like, there's no pipe work, so I don't. He's just literally just grinding against. He's the shittest welder in the world.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's because he's not. He's not actually. He's just literally just welding a wall, like just a bit of
unless
the wall.
unless he's also like some form of what we don't know is that he's like in every scene and we don't know it, and he's like looking out for
Secretly
he's
welding in all of the
yeah
corners of
secret no not
the shot.
secretly welding, he's just going around going, do you need any welding done?
Yeah,
But like, you know, he might be in the background, he's like almost like a Crow-esque character but in a human form, and he's just in the background welding all the time.
well, as we said at the beginning, this one thing this film is very good at is world building.
Nice. There we go. What?
I used my sound effects. I forgot I even had
No,
them.
that's it. Well, there we go.
Yeah.
So, I mean, look, that's our discussion about The Crow. One of our favourite films of all time. I'm talking, you know, I'm taking words out your mouth, but I'm sure it probably bloody is. It is one of my favourite films of all time. It is a definition, a perfect example of filmmaking and performances coming together on every aspect. And I'm not just talking about the directors, I'm talking about cinematographers, I'm talking about the sound. The score itself is absolutely incredible. I'm talking about the soundtrack itself and how all that works together and then blends in perfectly with one of the greatest performances that I've ever seen in my life with Brandon Lee. Some of the other amazing performances and incredible character actors within the movie. This is one of those films that I will watch for the rest of my life, and I will enjoy every single time I watch it, and I will enjoy every single second of it. And not only do you get that sort of nostalgia factor for it, for not only the time period of what it was, but also you get the nostalgia of when obviously we first watched it, or when we didn't first watch it.
Yeah.
But it brings back so many memories of a time that I loved, a time that I was so impressionable, and this film did and will always leave a lasting impression. I mean, it is literally one of the reasons why I have long hair and wear black almost every single day, because this film is part of my brain chemistry now.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And I think as you get saying about it being a repeat watch, I think I'm going to start watching it more often on Devil's Night, the night before
Yes,
Halloween. Put that,
yeah, that's
get
it. So
that
that's
in
it.
on rotation, so that I maintain my bond with the Crow.
with the Crow. Well, that's it. Well, every single Halloween day, night, whatever it is, Halloween the movie itself, John Carpenter's Halloween is my watch every year. But you're right. I think every year now, Devil's Night. If you're not, that should be like a mass thing where everyone's watching the Crow.
It probably is. It's just I
On
hadn't even thought about it. But
but
why
we just
wouldn't
ain't
it
fucking
be?
done it.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, and if ever I put out a film, I'm going to choose a fucking day of the year that warrants people rewatching
People
it,
to watch it on that day
make
of the
some
year.
cash. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
gonna make.
It's a good way to
And
make
on
money.
that note, as more of a musician than I am a filmmaker, probably just gonna make a song called I don't know, 5th of June, and then I know that everyone will listen to it on the 5th of
Just
June.
on
So I'm
that
just
day,
copying.
everyone.
Yeah, I'm copying the idea of like adding in Devil's Night to this for the movie. I'm just gonna add all my songs now. I'm just gonna have dates in them.
That's it.
So
Just well,
marketing.
what you need to do is you need to do an album that's got 365 songs on it.
That's the
Um,
one. Fucking
and
hell!
that's
What
the
a
one.
brilliant
And
idea.
every day you bring out an album where it's about that day, and then at least once, one day,
Someone will
once,
find it.
well,
Yeah.
yeah, someone will find it on that day and go, do you know what? Yeah, I get it. I understand
I
it.
always listen to it. Yeah.
Well,
I'll get some
talking
streams.
about that, as we talk about you making an album and all that sort of stuff, now is the time. Obviously, every time I have a guest on my show, not only are you one of my oldest friends, I don't mean that in age, I just mean the fact that we've known each other forever.
But it is true in
But we
age as
are
well, I
old.
think.
We
So,
are old.
yeah.
Um,
And I'm older than you. So,
yeah, not by
hey,
much, but a little bit.
enough.
Um, enough.
Enough that it
But
hurts.
not that it hurts.
Yeah.
But now I want you to sort of tell everybody out there where they can find yourself, everything that you do. You are obviously a multi-talented person that has,
Talent's
you
a
know, a
strong
great.
word, but I do lots of things. So I appreciate
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
tell me.
Well,
So tell everyone
the,
where they can find you.
if you've enjoyed the way that I talk about, mainly I talk about stuff. So you can follow me on Instagram, and on there I'll tell you all about my live streams. I mainly live stream on Twitch. You can find me on Twitch. It's always the same, Koopanut. And I'm constantly trying different uh, creative things. So I've got some ideas for uh, some new live stream series that are kind of music based. I'm very much into my music because I'm also a DJ, and I run. I have a local. I have a show on a local radio station called Helsham FM. That's every Friday, 6 to 8 p.m. And I do a lot of live streaming of DJ sets most Mondays. I also stream computer gaming, and I stream like kind of magazine music content where I'll talk about music news, review albums, and things like that. So the best thing to do is follow me on Instagram, because on there I'll chew your ear off about all the other stuff that you could
That you're doing.
engage in if you want to. So yeah, find me on Instagram, send me a DM and say what's up, and yeah, from there you'll hear about all the other stuff. And at some point this year, I'll have something that I want you to be involved in, but I'm still
Good.
ironing out. You know what it's like to be a creative. You've got lots of
Yeah.
ideas, and some of them need a bit of work before they can kind of hit the road. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's the
You
plan.
know,
And I am planning on doing some music this year, because I haven't made much music, particularly solo, in a long time. I think it's been 3 years since I last did any songs. So my plan is to do put out a bit of music this year as well, just for
well,
fun.
you know what I'm like with your stuff. Like, obviously, I've known you for a long time. I have always been an advocate for you pursuing any of your creativity, because
Yes.
we are creative people, and that's one thing that obviously really connects us as well. We've always been really creative people, and we, like you're saying, we have so many things in our brain going around in circles. You know, those hamsters are working overtime constantly in our creative brains of what to do and stuff. Um, but I'm always an advocate, obviously, for you pursuing something, because every time you do something, I always enjoy it. You know, I do. And I think it's something that other people enjoy. But like everything creative wise, it's about finding it. And that's the hardest
Yeah.
part. And that's it. So all I urge everyone to do is to go and find everything that Coops is doing. As he said, go on his Instagram, look on anything that he's doing. You'll find everything through there, and just go and enjoy one of like the most creative people that I've ever met in my life, and but not creative in a shit way, creative in a good way, and that's
Yeah, but
always nice.
if you don't like the kind of humor that if you feel like I have spearheaded and ruined this podcast and this recording,
We haven't.
don't bother. Won't be for you. So just
No,
leave it.
you haven't. Of course, you haven't. Well,
Just do
I
something else.
really enjoyed
But thank
this.
you so much for having me, because it's been really nice to do this and be able to be a part and support you know the channel, because
That's it.
obviously,
Well,
as you say, we've
well,
been
this
friends
is
for a long
now.
time, and we've
Yeah,
got creativity in common.
yeah, exactly, and that's it. And that's a good name for another album. Um,
Yes. After the
so
365 song album,
yes,
just
that's
named
going to take up the
after each
majority
day of
of
the
your
year.
time. Yeah,
Yeah.
unless
To be
it's like
fair, there won't be
300.
much on my Instagram for the next year, because I'm going to be quite busy with
Because
this
you're
album
making.
I've now got to do.
Yeah, but it's going to be an absolutely banging album.
Yeah, it'll be long though.
So
So
yeah, it's going to be a long one. So get with it. But yeah. So as I said, go and follow, go and listen, go and watch everything Coops does, and I just, as usual, I really hope that you've enjoyed being on the show, and I really hope anybody that watches this has enjoyed it. Welcome to the Creepzone, which is obviously this new series, is something that I'm really enjoying doing. It's going to be a big part of the Let's Talk Horror channel for 2024. So if you are watching this and you haven't subscribed, please do. That truly, honestly helps everyone, not just me, but any content creators out there, helps us reach new audiences. It helps YouTube take notice of us, and it helps other people take notice, and it helps channels evolve. And that's what I want to do. If you haven't listened to the Let's Talk Horror channel podcast before, just go onto any podcast platform, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the others, and go and listen to the episodes. Every single thing that I do, you're just going to get very honest, in-depth, passionate conversations about horror, whatever we talk about, and I absolutely love doing this. So it's been a pleasure speaking to one of my best friends on an episode about one of the best movies ever made.
It's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Everyone, just be amazing. You're all legends. Just join us and be a creep.